Hello, and welcome to the Viva Connections SharePoint Framework Biweekly Sync. It is May 19th, which seems impossible, 2022. I am Patrick Rodgers, your host in this call, and we got a great agenda for you as always. Latest updates on the SharePoint Framework, updates across the Patterns and Practices program, new community samples. We'll talk about picture time and together mode, and we got great demos from Anoop and Fabio, building office locations, Viva Connections Adaptive Card Extension with SPFx, and using Adaptive Cards Designer Control from the PnP Control Gallery and SPFx solutions. We've got lots of opportunities to participate in the PnP program and this call and our other calls. First of all, I would encourage everybody listening, if you've got something cool you're working on for your customers or your company, and you are able to, not everything can be demoed publicly, but if you are able to, we would really encourage you to reach out, get a demo spot. There's a link down there in the bottom right corner to reserve that spot. Might not be like the next call. Sometimes we're booked out a little bit, but we will get you a session. So please do reach out. Love, love, love to see the community demos from everybody out there and all the great work you are doing. Contributing on GitHub, of course, is always valuable across all of the different organizations and repositories. And then finally, we always appreciate your feedback on these calls and feedback on the rest of the program. How are we doing? Where can we help with our documentation? Where else can we help generally? And of course, positive feedback is okay too. If we're really doing something you like, you can let us know, and we could always do maybe a little bit more of that. Next up is our giant Page-O link. So we've got developer videos. Those are going to be topic-focused videos. So learning about different things, authentication, ACEs, SharePoint Framework, Microsoft Graph. Then we've got our community videos, which are going to be the recordings of these calls. So this call, our other Thursday call, the Tuesday calls, all of our sort of community calls and those sorts of things. As well, we've got a bunch of open source repositories, different organizations on GitHub there, PnP, Office Dev, Microsoft Graph, and SharePoint. And then tons and tons of great samples. These keep growing, which is really fantastic to see. So ak.ms, all of those different things, right? So we got samples for M365, team samples, SPFx web parts, SPFx ACEs, Power Platform, SPFx extensions, and list formatting as well. Check out the new Unified Samples Gallery, which brings all of those things together, which is a fantastic resource to help you find samples a little more quickly than having to go to all the individual repositories. Finally, that's all a lot to remember. We've now got a new updated link here for ak.ms/m365/community. So an updated link for all of these resources. I know we've been saying there was one link to rule them all, but we've decided to change that a little bit. So ak.ms/m365/community. So a little bit of change there, but takes you to all the same great resources. So I encourage you to check that out. Microsoft 365 developer community calls. These are a bunch of different calls across a lot of different topic areas, and would certainly encourage you to check out any and all of these as you have time. But of course, they are all recorded, so you can catch up later. I know these don't always fit into everyone's schedule all the time. Totally understandable. You can always get the invites there at the link on the bottom, ak.ms/m365/calls. But then all of these are recorded. You can always catch up later, so don't feel bad if you can't make everyone. None of us can. Next up, we've got our Tuesday call. The next one is going to be the 24th of May. That's the Microsoft 365 platform call. This is a call hosted by Microsoft with Microsoft presenters on various topics about what's new across the service. And next week, we've got Karina and Vesa talking about the Microsoft Viva ISV benefits program. And Satya, we're going to actually do this. The second half of the hour will be a watch party for the Build 2022 keynote, which will be kicking off, next Tuesday. So look forward to seeing that. Look forward to seeing all of you next week. We'll talk about that a little bit more, I'm sure, later. And then we also have a collaborative app session scheduling now available. So you can check these out. These are breakout sessions on demand. These are all part of Microsoft Build. So ak.ms/m365/build22. This is a great way to sort of find some topic areas, stuff you want to hear more about, stuff you want to learn more about. Sign up for those. Certainly encourage you to check all of those out. And then I hope I'm not saying this wrong, I believe most of that will be recorded and available later as well. Again, if you're not able to attend for time zone reasons or schedule reasons, no worries. And I'll hand things over to David for sharing is caring.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Well, friends, as you may or may not know, Sharing is Caring is a program here that is going to provide you hands-on guidance in a number of areas that you may be a little unfamiliar with, areas that might be new to you. These are safe space, hands-on, live and in living color sessions where we are going to collaborate together. That means that we don't record them, so you're free to ask any and all questions that you may like. I know when I first started, it was very scary, and sometimes I'd ask a question thinking, should I already know this? It's always okay to ask questions, but when it's recorded, it can be a little scary. So we invite you to join. Power Platform Samples contributors scheduled. Community Docs is scheduled. Writing for the Web is a brand new session with Emily Mancini and Hugo Bernier that's going to be really cool in showing how you can be more effective in writing for the web, which is useful for all of us as we are building our digital assets. So please don't hesitate to join. We would love to have you collaborate with us. Now, once you have collaborated and you've contributed to a number of those samples that we've talked about, or you've written documentation, we want to recognize you for all the amazing work you're doing. So the recognition program is here to provide that celebration and official recognition for you. It is powered by Credly, the same Credly that handles the Microsoft certification badges. And that means that they can sit right alongside those certification badges, and you can associate them to LinkedIn. You can associate them to your blog and to your website, share them on Twitter. We know that you're doing amazing work, and we want to recognize it. So it costs nothing. We cover all the costs of Credly. We do need you to opt in, aka.ms/m365pnp-recognition. We've been seeing a bunch of badges just shared in the last few days, and even more are coming. So feel free to opt in there, everybody, and thank you for all the work you're doing. Patrick, back to you.
Great stuff. Thanks, David. And thanks everybody who's helping with the Sharing is Caring sessions and participating in those. Really fantastic to see that continue to grow. And we'll hand things over to Vesa now for SharePoint framework updates.
Excellent. Let's be quick on this one, just to show you the rolling 28 days usage worldwide since July 2019. We are seeing a nice uptake on the things. Just to call out a few things, there was a small data hiccup on autumn this last year, and then we can also see that we are back in line on the growth. So after the slowness in April, which is a seasonal drop, which is actually interesting. You can see the same drop happening every single year around the April timeframe. But I guess it's the spring breaks and the Eastern and all of that, which is always impacting the usage. Now let's go to the following slide, which is the latest update on what's happening. So the 1.15, the next beta, we are just testing the 1.15 next beta, verifying that everything is working, and we're about to release that. So within by end of June, so roughly in mid-June, we will, well, actually earlier than that, we'll have a release candidate out, and then we're going to GA the 1.15 right after that. So things are looking really good for the new customizers, which are targeting for edit, list, and library forms, and a few other things as well. There's going to be a lot of additional capabilities also queued for 1.16 and 1.17. So 1.16 version is coming out, the preview version of that in July, so a few weeks after the 1.15 release, which is already having new things in the pipeline. One thing to call out, unfortunately, the support for no v16 is delayed from 1.15 version, which is far from optimal, but there are dependencies in the SharePoint Online related on Office UI Fabric components, and that is actually causing us the dependency which we cannot tackle in the platform team, which is certainly far from optimal, but that is moving along gradually as well. I guess that's it from my side. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Vesa. So PnP JS Client-Side Library updates.
I'm here.
Oh, wow.
I'm here. Well, thank you, everyone. Version 3.3 was released May 17th. Unfortunately, we had some pretty fun issues. So we had a path issue with a new post install script that we added that will essentially put, as you're installing the PnP JS and the PnP graph libraries, it would notify you if you are using the SharePoint framework and need to do some additional getting started steps. Well, we had a path issue, resolved that in 3.3.1, and then found out the very next day that the Mac OS operating system didn't like one of the commands in the post install script. So we had to do another release, 3.3.2, that fixed that, and that happened yesterday. So all of that, everything should be running nicely now. We did a bunch of general documentation updates, some samples, and various updates. We did add a couple of new functions, a get locked by user method for the files area is added, and we added the ability to create a chat message to a team channel. And then there was a bunch of other reported issues, etc. If you go and check out the changelog, you can get all of those details. Please remember that we are on Twitter, M365 PnP JS, and also that we do nightly builds. So anytime we merge any PRs, those updates will be in the nightly release, so you can test those out ahead of a formal release. And certainly, if you have any issues, go to our issues list and submit any questions and or other things you might find to that list. That is all we have for today, Patrick. Glad that I could make it.
I'm glad you can make it too, Julie.
So sweet.
Thanks so much for that update. And now we'll move on into CLI for Microsoft 365. Great updates from Adam and Martin, our new maintainers of the CLI, I believe, have just been added to the team. So excited to see them join in. We got a new beta version 5.3 out with managing lists and list item permissions, retrieving list of security alert for your tenant, easily opening the management page for an Azure AD app, extending support for Planner. And you can always install that 5.3 beta with the commands you see there. The second one gives you a great Docker container experience with all the dependencies and everything set up exactly as you need, so you can use it very quickly and easily without having to set things up on your machine or to use different versions of Node or all those different sorts of things. Run it right there in the Docker container. Really awesome stuff to see that. And ak.ms/CLI-M365 to get all the updates and all of the information about using the CLI. So certainly check that out. And then we've got updates on the reusable components. We've got two sets of reusable controls. The first is the React Controls 3.8.0. Has some updates there for the people picker, adaptive card host, and support for section backgrounds, as well as some various fixes. And those React controls, again, are the ones designed to be used in the body of your web parts or application customizers. And then we have the React property controls. That's at 3.7.0, updates around the property field list picker, the property field color picker. And the property controls, again, are those designed to be used in the edit pane of your SharePoint Framework web parts. So really exciting to see those continue to evolve and grow. And want to thank everybody there in the list for helping out, continuing to enhance and improve and build new controls. Fantastic stuff to see there. More information, the two links down there at the bottom, sp-dev-fx-property-controls and sp-dev-fx-controls-react. You can always follow M365 PnP Controls on Twitter for all the latest updates. Love to see that. Modern search finally here. Before we get to some sample updates, ak.ms/PnP search, building modern search experiences with flexible SPFx web parts. Adaptive card support is in the works. So we're going to be really excited to see that come along. But the 4.6.1 is the April release. You can see the details there in the link for all of what was updated in that release. Thanks to everybody that helped out with that. I would again remind folks, if you're on the V3 branch, that is more or less in maintenance mode at this point, and would encourage you to update to the V4 stuff when you are able. And with that, we'll hand things over to David for some updates on the ACEs.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we don't have any new samples, so we got a sad cat. But we are open for samples, love new samples, and I know that there are a number of PRs that are in progress. We promise those will get processed here soon. But we just want to encourage everyone to continue to support and provide those demos and samples to these repos. We love everything you're doing. And if you have any questions or are not sure how to submit, then reach out. We can get you in Sharing is Caring or provide some support. But thank you for everyone for all your amazing work. ak.ms/SPFX ACEs. Patrick, back to you.
Great, thanks, David, for that update. And now we're on to optional picture time. So I think Vesa will go ahead and take over here.
I'm here. 1 second, and I will start the computation. I will start my screen sharing in a second. Okay, that's ready to go. And let me share my screen. Let me get that one. And then let's get us into together mode and billing. What do we want to do today? Let's do Team Rabbit. Okay, let's do I like the auditorium. Here we go. We have 50 seats in the room. Let's not yet. Let's wait for the people to enable the videos. I will enable my camera as well. So I will be here. We have one more row to fill, 5 seats or so. or 6 seats. Oh, this is starting to look really, really good. I will click the recording, enable the videos. We'll do some hand waving here for a while. I think we have a few more seats, but let's do some hand waving. Thanks everybody for joining. And thank you for being part of this awesome community. Really, really pleased to have you here again. So awesome. Thank you, everybody. Really, really great. Excellent. And then back to you, Patrick.
Cool. So next up, we're just going to jump to the demos. And Anoop, if you want to go ahead and take over. Looking forward to learning more about building Office Locations Viva Connections adaptive card extensions. So when you're ready, take it away.
All right. I have started sharing my screen now. Thanks, Patrick. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this demo on adaptive card extensions, in particular, the Office Locations adaptive card extension. Right. My name is Anoop Tatti. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a developer at a company called Content Plus Cloud in London, United Kingdom. I write blogs on a platform called Medium under the username Anoop T. I'm on Twitter under the username Anoop Tells, and my GitHub username is Anoop T. You can follow me on those platforms if needed. Okay, let's start with the demo. Viva Connections and Ace. Oh, not that Ace, Anoop. It's not tennis season yet. We will get there soon, but let's go to the actual demo. Right. So here I am in my dev tenant in the home site in the dashboard page. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and edit this dashboard and add the card, which is called as Office Locations. And if I just go to edit the properties, I'll set it to large, and then it says there is some setup that is needed in order for the adaptive card to render. So let's start adding those values. So card title, we're fine with that. Card icon, we'll leave it empty. And then the image to show on the card, I'll just pick a random image from the web. And we'll see that soon. And then there is a property to say show quick view as list. We'll set that to no. And then the next thing it asks is the data source. So basically, this adaptive card extension shows all the different offices that are present in our tenant or in our company. So these offices might be stored in different places. So that's what we are looking at here. So it is asking where are the offices stored. So let's pick the data source as local. So once we pick that, it says we need to manage the data for offices. So we are using here a nice PnP reusable control. So it asks the details for the office. So here we are saying that we are going to provide the data locally. So let me give these details that I have copied across. So firstly, we'll give the name of the office, which is London office, and then we'll give an address. And then it asks for the latitude and longitude. So I've copied these values. I'm just pasting them over here. And longitude map image link, we'll leave that as is for now. I'll explain the details in a minute soon. Then it asks for the time zone. We'll set the time zone as Europe/London, and then we'll give it the URL of a page, an internet page related to this office. And finally, we'll say who the manager of this office is, and it's our favorite user, Megan Bowen. And we save that. So if there are more offices, we can, go ahead and add other offices needed. But for this demo, I'll just say there's only one office. And once we do that, you can see that over here, it says that we've got one office. And then let's quickly go through the other properties. It says whether to show search box or not. We'll say that yes. Then there are some properties related to maps. It asks whether we have to show maps in the quick view. We'll say that to yes. And then it asks for the map source. We'll choose Bing. And then it asks whether we have to use the Maps API. We say yes to that, and then provide the API key. And then some other properties like whether it has to show the local time, we say yes. And then what API should it use to show the local time? There are a couple of APIs, Temporal and Luxon. We will have a look at these in a minute. and then it says whether to show local weather, yes or no. We set that to yes. Should it get weather from list or use weather API? We say it has to use, it has to use weather API, and then we provide the open weather map API key, right? Okay. Sorry, there are a lot of properties, but these all make sense in a minute. So once the properties are set, now if I just say that as draft, and then when it says we have one office, we click on view details, it shows the details of that office. So basically it says the London office, the time in London office is 1522, which is the same time zone as the current user, which is myself, and then the address, and then the map itself of the office, and then the weather in London, which is very nice today, 21 degrees and sunny. And then there are some other buttons as well. Get directions. Clicking on that, it opens, Bing Maps, and asks you can give a from address, and then you can take a look at the map, and then the other details like contact the manager, that opens the chat in Teams, and finally more details takes you to the internet page we set. That's fine. Now you might say, if the data source is, we don't want the data source to be local. There might be some terms in the taxonomy which have the offices defined already. And that's what I have here exactly. There is a term store called as offices, and in this I have about 6 offices over here, and then each office. So if I just click on that, has some properties, address, latitude, longitude, and the time zone, etc. Yeah. So these are all defined over here. Now what we'll do is we'll use the ID of this term set. I'll just copy that, and then go back here, and then change the data source from local to taxonomy, and then it asks for the ID of the term set. I paste that, and then you can see that there are 6 offices. Okay, and then the third option for the data source is a list as well. So if you have offices in a separate list, then you can supply that as well. Okay, so now let me just save this as draft. And then when I click on view details again, and now it shows all the other offices. So you can see we've got the Bangalore office, and now the local time in Bangalore is 1954, which is 4 hours and 30 minutes ahead of us. And then, all the other offices, with their respective time and the map and weather as well. And so that's how we can see all the offices. Now, the other functionality that exists in this is the search functionality. So if you want to search for something, let's say if you want to search for the Seattle office, so if I type in settle instead of Seattle, or making a spelling mistake on purpose, and then search for that, you can see that I've searched for settle, and then the return results is Seattle. So we are using something called as fuse.js, which does a fuzzy search on the text. And then the final thing I wanted to show was, before we jump into the code, was this, here we have a property which says show maps in quick view. And then if I set that to no, and then say that again, and then when we click on view details, now you see that there are no maps in quick view. However, we've got this button called as open in maps, which is nothing but the geolocation action provided by Viva Connections. I think this is part of SPFx 1.14 or 15. I'm not sure. However, there is information on how to use this as well. So when I click on that, it doesn't work. Sorry about that. Should have tested it before letting you know, but there is a glitch. Of course, the demo gods have decided that they'll not coordinate with me, but essentially the idea was when you click on that, it should open a pop-up and then show the map. Anyway, let's have a look at the code. So So what are the different features used in this ACE? These are not SharePoint features. These are the properties of this solution. So firstly, we have multiple data sources, as we saw, can be local or taxonomy or list. We are using PnP JS version 3 in order to get the data from taxonomy and from the list. We are using a temporal API or Luxon to get the local time. And then we are using the geolocation action type, which for some reason is not working currently. And then finally, the geolocation action in this solution is not working, so I need to take a look at that. And then the final bit is caching. So we are, wherever possible, we are using a lot of caching in the solution. Right, so let's take a look at the code. So the code itself is part of the PnP ACES repository. So there's an ACE called as image card office location. There's a pending pull request, like David mentioned earlier, with some updates. So that will be merged soon. So in that ACE, we've got this adaptive card extension.ts file. And that file, what it does is it has a method called as load offices, which has some functionality in order to load the offices based on the data source. So what we do is we switch on the data source, and depending upon what has been selected, we either get the data source from the local properties or from the term set or from a list. So in this case, we've selected the data source as taxonomy. So let's have a look at how the terms from the terms set are being obtained. So there's a method called as get office terms. Now we are using PnP JS to call this. Let's see how we are doing that. So there's a file called as office location service. And that in that file, we are using PnP JS, in particular the extend factory method, in order to extend the term store and to define our own methods in order to, or our own functions in order to get the offices, or the in this case the terms. So there are some nice samples available with respect to PnPjs v3, which provide the same information. So what I've done is I've just used one of those samples and then changed the code slightly. Right. So we've got this function called as get office terms, and what we are doing here is with PnPjs, we are saying firstly get the term set based on the term set ID, and then get all the terms under those, and in particular just get the ID and the labels and the properties of the terms. So once we have that information, we then use caching in order to store all this information in the browser cache. So once we have all the terms, these are nothing but all the 6 offices that we saw earlier, we just map all those terms into a custom object. So we get the the different properties, like the name of the term, which is the name of the office, the address, latitude and longitude, the time zone, who the manager is and what the page is, etc. So basically we get all those custom properties and then store them in a custom object. And then once we have got all the offices, what we do is if there are no offices, we just say that we just display the error card. But if there are some offices, then what we do is we just add some extra properties like the chat link for the manager, and then set some other properties like the time as null, and then whether the map and the whether we've gotten those or not. So initially we set them to null or false. We'll be changing these values later on. And then with all this, we then set the state of the adaptive card extension, in which we set all the offices. We also set something called as filtered offices, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And finally, we'll say the card view to render is the initial card view, which shows us the number of offices. Right. So just to tell you where we are now. So currently, we've got all the data related to the offices from the term store. It is now present in the state variable called as offices. And then the next steps are we have to display the number of offices, and each office needs to be displayed in the quick view in detail. Right. So there is a file called as card view. Again, ACEs have got different cards. If you want to take a look at what are the different card views, there are a lot of sessions or a lot of videos available on YouTube from the calls. So we can take a look at those. So one of such views is the card view. So what we do here is we get the title from the properties, and then we calculate the number of offices using the length property, and then we just say we have how many number of offices. So in this case, we got 6 offices. So that's the information we display. Right. So that's the card view, which is very simple. And then when we click on view details, what happens is we open the quick view. So the quick view is nothing but an adaptive card JSON file. So as you can see on the left side over here, it is a simple adaptive card JSON showing all the properties that we have set in the offices. Now I won't be going into the details of this JSON file because it's just like I said, a simple JSON file with some text or some buttons, etc., which shows all the different properties of the office. But we will take a look at how we are supplying data to this JSON file so that they get displayed. So it's nothing but this, the JSON, when it renders, it looks like that. So there is a corresponding file called as quickview.ts, which is highlighted on the right side. So that is a file wherein we set all the data. So firstly, we have this object called as quick view data, in which we need to set what office we are going to show, and whether we have to show the search or not, whether we have to show the weather or not, show the time or not, etc. So all this data is gathered into this object, and it is set initially with some values. And then what we do is, from the state, we get which office needs to be displayed. So there is an index that we set. So by default, that index will be 0. So it will show the first office from the offices array. And then what we do is, for each office, we call different methods. So whether if the map has to be shown, then we call a function, which we'll have a look at in a minute. If we need to show the time, then we call the function that shows the time. And finally, if we need to show the weather, we call a function that shows the weather. Once we have all that data, we again manipulate the data to return object with this extra information, and then that basically gets shown in the quick view. So in order to get the map, we have a method called as get office location map details. And as you can see over here, what we are doing is, based on the map source, if it is Bing or Google, we just call this URL, which gives us the static image for that particular location based on the latitude and longitude that is passed. And that's what you see over here in the quick view. And then for the time, like I said earlier, we've got 2 APIs. One is the temporal API, which is slightly new. It'll be I think it'll be used quite heavily in the future, because there will be no need to use any third-party libraries, basically, with the help of temporal. So it'll all be a part of the JavaScript engine that the process will run. So I think the proposal is still in the last phase, but it will be available soon. However, that's why they've given us a polyfill as of now. So that's what we are using here currently. So if we have to, in the ACE settings, if we say that the time needs to be obtained by temporal, then we just load that temporal polyfill, and then we get the current time, and then we get the offset to get the time difference. So how many hours or minutes the office time is ahead of or behind us. And then we do some computation to compose this nice string to say the local office is ahead of or behind so many hours, etc., and show that information. And that's what you see over here. In this case, Seattle is 8 hours behind London. And then finally, in order to show the weather, we use the Open Weather Map API. This is a simple HTTP call. We pass the latitude and longitude, get the weather, and then put that in a custom object and show that. And that's what you see over here. And then in order to do the search, we use something called as fuse.js, in which we set the property initially, and then finally, whenever the user clicks the search button, which is called the fuse.search method, which then goes ahead and does the search in the office array. Right. So there are quite a few sessions from Patrick, from Wes and Waldeck, and from Paolo. You can take a look at those to get more information on ACES, and these are the resources that were used in today's demo. Thank you.
Great stuff. Really impressive demo. The way you linked all that stuff together. Nice, clean code and well-structured demo there with all the different code samples and showing the ACE as you're showing the code. Really impressive stuff. And with that, we are going to head over to Fabio for his demo on using adaptive card designer controls with PnP Control Gallery. Take it away.
Okay. Hi to all. So I want to share you my new control, the adaptive card designer control, and this control will be available inside the PnP React Control Gallery. So the agenda is I want to share just a recap of the previous control, the adaptive card host React control, and then I want to show you the new adaptive card designer control and how to use inside SharePoint framework. So just a simple recap about the adaptive card host. This React control, it's a control that's able to, by using the SDK of the adaptive card, to render an adaptive card with the look and feel of Fluent UI. So by using the Fluent UI React control for actions and inputs inside a SharePoint framework solution. It's a control that take the adaptive card payload, the object data, and merge inside by using the adaptive card template extension. So create the card and then render inside on a web part, for example. There are different kind of properties that you can use. For example, you can use the property onInvokeAction to manage the action that you can execute inside adaptive card. For example, the submit action, the onError, or for example, the onSet custom element or onSet custom action to add more controls inside this adaptive card host. This is the result. So this is just two samples of the same web part that was rendered inside on a SharePoint page or inside on a Teams tab. The cool feature of this control is that use a custom theme for three kind of theme for themes, light, dark, and high contrast. And we are able to render in the correct way with the correct look and feel the adaptive card inside with the same look and feel of the themes, for example. So now it's time to the adaptive card design control. So this control at this moment it's not available. Will be available in the next version, I hope, of the PnP Reusable React control. It's not available because I spend a lot of time to understand how to put this. So the standard designer by using the SDK inside a React control. I fixed a lot of problem on hosting this designer inside a React control, and I refactored the previous adaptive card host control to share more code from that control to this adaptive card designer control. The cool feature is you have to use only one React control. We have some property that could be the same of the previous control. You need to pass the card payload, the data, the Fluent UI theme, the context of the web part, and some properties like enable data binding support, show data structure toolbox, and so on. A cool thing is you have to think about This control simplifies the use of the designer inside an SharePoint framework web part. It's very interesting. Later, I'll show you some demo. So this is the result. It's the standard adaptive card designer that is hosted inside a Fluent UI panel, because the adaptive card designer need to fit all the space inside the page. And if you want to try to put this designer inside a web part, it would be a problem on the height of the web part, for example. So I want to share the demo. This is the web part that I'll really show you. And this web part hosts, in this case, two controls. The first one is the adaptive card host, and you are able to see the a simple adaptive card rendered here. And then on a button to open the new control, the designer control. So first of all, we can change, of course, the adaptive card to render. I want to go here. And then if I click on the Open Designer, we are able to see the adaptive card designer hosted inside a SharePoint page. So with this designer, you are able to change all, so it's the same designer of the adaptive card, and you are able to change, for example, the element properties. You are able to see the card structure, and you are able to see a cool feature, I think, the data structure. So in the adaptive card host control, we injected automatically the some context property from SharePoint framework. For example, the theme, or some property of the context, like the Azure AD info, culture info, user info, and SP list info, site info, and web info, and so on. With the designer, you are able to automatically use this property, this complex object, inside your card, and then render by using the adaptive card host control. We can, of course, click on preview mode to see the preview of the card. And the customization that I added to this to the standard designer, it's, for example, the change the host application by using the themes, light theme, dark, and hide contrast. In this way, you are able to see the same card in the different themes, theme, or the default that come from this specific SharePoint site. Another cool feature, it's this one, the breakpoints. This is not available at this moment in the default adaptive card designer, but basically it's a way to select all the breakpoints that come from Fluent UI. In this way, you are able to check the dimension of your adaptive card with all the breakpoint that we have inside the Fluent UI and then inside on a SharePoint page. If you click on the fluid or fit to content, you are able to see the web part fitted to the content, so the adaptive card fitted to the content of itself. If you remove the preview mode, you are able to, of course, to see the design of the card. You are able to change, for example, you are able to change color. You are able to change the dimension of the text. And if you try to see the preview, you're able to see the changes on the card. And the cool thing is this new save button. If you click on the save button, you are able to manage custom function. And then, for example, if I try to close the adaptive card designer, you're able to see that this adaptive card, it's updated with the new payload that come from the adaptive card designer. Another thing is I made a change on the new card button. And when you click on the new card, we can inform the user if are sure to create a new card, of course. And At this moment, we have an empty card, but the control have the possibility to, just with a property, to share the payload that we can use for the new card. The cool feature that I added is this snippets functionality. The snippets, it's like the Visual Studio snippets. And in this way, you are able to drag and drop just snippets of, it's not a control, but it's the payload or part of an adaptive card. And in these simple snippets, you're able to see some elements like an image that have a specific URL of the SharePoint user photo, and we have some property inside the query string and the username query string, and I use the binding with the root context. It's the same for this label and this one, and these properties come from the data structure that I pass to the context that I pass to the adaptive card. And if I click on the preview mode, I'm able to see my image, my name, and my email of this tenant that come directly from the SharePoint framework context. Of course, if I click on save, I'm able to save this web part and then show by using the adaptive card host. So I want to show you just a simple example of the code. This is the way on to use the adaptive card designer. I created two controls. The finally control could be the adaptive card designer host, because this control, it's the control that use a Fluent UI panel to open the control that I created, the adaptive card designer. And then this adaptive card designer, it's the core of this control, and it's implemented by using React and React Hook, and of course the adaptive card designer. Basically, we have some hooks that take the property from the control and then set the adaptive card designer instance and global settings and so on. We set the host container that are shared from the adaptive card host control, hide some button in the toolbar, add the choice picker to select the breakpoint, for example. And at the end, we attach the card designer directly to a specific div inside the React element. I used a simple trick to resolve the problem of the adaptive card designer SDK. That this problem is that you are not able to set a payload of the card if the Monaco editor it's not loaded. So in this case, I show just on a spinner, and then I check that if the Monaco editor is loaded. If it's loaded, I remove the spinner and then show directly the div inside with adaptive card designer. Another thing that I'm able to share with you, it's a lot of code is shared from the previous adaptive card host control, and I needed to create some new adaptive card designer object. These objects are the peers, and the peers it's used when you have to define the property. For example, if I put a date input here, this is the same date input that comes from the adaptive card host control. But if you try to change this property, you need to define an appear object for an element or an action to define all these properties. And then I redefined all the action and element peers to use the Fluent UI action or Fluent UI inputs that I implemented in the previous controls. So last thing, there are some fixes to the CSS of the designer. For example, I set the errors and not blue as a default to show validation error, for example. And I fixed the CSS to be able to use the designer inside a panel or a dialog, because there are some problems by using the default styles. inside these kind of controls. Another thing is there are no possibility to change the theme of the adaptive card designer to take the theme of the SharePoint site, for example, because we have to redefine completely the CSS of the designer. It's a lot of work. And there are no dark theme for the designer. Okay, I finish. So next step. The first one was the creation of the adaptive card host component. It's already done. The second is the adaptive card designer component. Will be available, I hope, in the next version of the library. I create an APR next week. And the next steps, the really next steps, is to create a new set of adaptive card elements by using Fluent UI React, Fluent UI Web Components, or Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and then use directly inside the designer to design the card and in the adaptive card host to host this card. So if you want to contact me, you can use this email, fabio@appv.com, or follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or GitHub. So I'm finished. Back to you, Patrick.
Great, thank you for that. So thanks very much to Anoop and Fabio for some great demos there. So the recording for this call will be available in about 24 hours on the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel, aka.ms/m365/videos. Follow us on Twitter there. Our next Viva Connections call will be June 2nd at 7 a.m. Pacific, so the same time. That's in 2 weeks. And our next general dev call will be next Thursday, May 26th. At the same time. Available, all the community calls again, available at ak.ms/m365/calls. Want to thank all of you for joining us today. I want to thank again our presenters today, and thank you for all the great work you're all doing as part of the community, and look forward to talking again soon. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.